Rated T for teen.
Each year, thousands of adults lose their shred. It's an epidemic simply known as shred loss. But it doesn't have to be this way, because rekindling your shred is as easy as playing the new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4. With new parks, cross-platform multiplayer, and sick new game modes, we can put an end to shred loss everywhere. Get the new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 and show the world that the shred's not dead. Get Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 available now.
Amazon One Medical presents Painful Thoughts.
I've been on hold to make a doctor's appointment for 23 minutes now. The automated voice has told me 47 times that my call is very important to them. I'm starting to think that they don't think my call is important at all.
With Amazon One Medical 24/7 virtual care, you'll get help fast without having to remain on the line to make an appointment. Amazon One Medical. Healthcare just got less painful.
We've done so many shows about how bad things have gotten in Gaza that I'm not sure how to tell you that things have gotten worse. But looking around, that's the unmistakable conclusion. The basics go like this. This week, more than 100 aid agencies and human rights groups, including Doctors Without Borders and Save the Children, started warning that mass starvation is spreading across the region. Some of those starving people are reporters. A photographer for Agence France Presse told his bosses he's so hungry he can no longer walk. And when people show up to claim what little food there is, they risk death. The UN now estimates that more than 600 people have been killed in the vicinity of aid sites. Many of them were shot. The images that accompany these stories are relentless.
You know, I've been dealing with images of war and the Holocaust for all of my professional career, which started in the late 70s. But I must say in the last few months, for me personally, it's become harder and harder to actually watch the images.
Omer Bartov feels like bearing witness to what's happening is part of his job. He's Israeli. He's a professor of Holocaust studies at Brown. So he sifts through what he can. There are images from reporters, posts from everyday people, and then the stuff posted by Israeli soldiers, some of it outright hateful. Omer's studied enough conflict that he's not surprised that these images alone aren't changing the way people around the world see Gaza. Historically, he says, images just can't do that. So he started doing something else, changing his language.
Well, what's happening now in Gaza is genocide. It's a genocidal campaign.
When Omer uses the word genocide, he's not using it as an expression of outrage, though he says that's often how others hear it. A few weeks after he first began labeling the Gaza conflict a genocide, he returned home to Israel. His friends, his family, they were not pleased.
Those that I spoke with felt uncomfortable with me using the term, but that was part of a larger sort of response to Gaza.
That must have been hard for you.
Yes, it was very hard.
So why keep articulating this anyway? Like, genocide is just a word.
No. Genocide is not just a word. Genocide is an internationally recognized crime. The vast majority of states in the world are signatories of the Genocide Convention of 1948. And if you identify a particular event as genocide, signatory states are duty-bound to do something about it.
So calling something a genocide is a mandate to act.
Yes, and a mandate to punish. So you have to stop before it happens, you have to stop if it is happening, and you have to punish those who were involved in that and those who are complicit.
That's a lot of people in this circumstance.
Yeah, that's governments, because the U.S. government the UK government, the French government, the German government are complicit because they have not only not tried to stop it, they have protected Israel, supplied it with arms, and supplied it with diplomatic cover. It's a stain that cannot be erased. It's a stain that will stay, I think, with Israel now for generations.
Today on the show, the case for labeling what's happening in Gaza a genocide. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This episode is brought to you by Americans United for Separation of Church and State. The future of religious freedom is at a crossroads. The same groups behind Project 2025 are working relentlessly to impose a Christian nationalist agenda on the laws and the lives of the American people. The wall between church and state is the last safeguard standing in their way. For over 75 years, Americans United has been a powerful but quiet force fighting to preserve church-state separation, freedom without favor, and equality without exception for every single American. Americans United stands up for your right to believe and to live as you choose, so long as you don't harm others. Whether you care about gender-affirming healthcare, reproductive freedom, LGBTQ+ rights, or supporting public schools, church-state separation is fundamental to nearly every constitutional freedom. Americans United exists to protect that separation. You can take action and join Americans United today by donating any dollar amount, and your support will be doubled. Join Americans United and help defend the fundamental freedoms that protect us all. Learn more and join the fight at au.org/slate. au.org/slate. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Can you talk to me a little bit about growing up in Israel? I know you were surrounded by Holocaust survivors, but you've also written and spoken about how you grew up playing in emptied Palestinian villages. Can you just explain your childhood and how you thought about Israel as a kid?
Yes, my childhood was quite conventional for Israeli kids of my generation. I was born in the mid-50s. I was actually born in a kibbutz, but I gave up on socialism when I was 18 months old and moved to Tel Aviv with my family and grew up in North Tel Aviv. In, very conservative country, small country, poor country with a lot of socialist remains. Very, very different society from what it is now, and also one in which there were many people, including many of my friends, who grew up in families with Holocaust survivors. So there were many people speaking other languages. In my neighborhood, there was Polish everywhere.
You talked about going to the beach, you'd see people's tattoos.
Yeah, either they would have their sleeves down if they didn't want people to see it. So you sit on the beach with your shirt with your sleeves down, which is not the Israeli thing. Or they'd sort of just not care, and you'd see the numbers tattooed on their forearms. There was a lot of that. I mean, I had a girlfriend, and I stayed overnight there. And every night her mother would start screaming in the middle of the night because she was a survivor and she'd have nightmares. This was how I grew up, and I also grew up with a sort of natural sense that this was my place. I had no questions about it at all.
Eventually, Omer grew up to be a scholar of the Holocaust and other genocides. When he was in his 40s, he traveled to Ukraine, to a formerly Jewish Ukrainian Polish town. It's where his mother lived until 1935. During World War II, the town's Polish residents were ethnically cleansed. The local Jews were killed. Walking through the town and seeing the traces of the people who'd once lived there, it was evocative. It made Omer see the place he was from in a new light.
I was wandering in those areas. This had been a place where there were had been towns, half of whose population was Jewish before the war, and there were still remnants. There were still empty synagogues that looked with vegetation growing inside. There were cemeteries where Ukrainian kids were grazing their goats with tombstones in a language they obviously didn't know. So there were remnants. And I wrote a book about that called Erased, about the erasure of what had been Jewish Galicia. And it was at that point that I started thinking more, I'd say, clearly about my own childhood and thinking I grew up surrounded by the remnants of Palestinian villages in North Tel Aviv. In Ramat Aviv, there had been a very large village, Shahmwanis, where now the University of Tel Aviv is. And we used to play in those remnants. We'd play cops and robbers there as kids. And we knew that there had been Arabs there and they somehow left. We didn't really have any language to speak about it. Nobody talked about it. There was a total silence over that. And that was when I started thinking about how you can live in a society where memory and erasure are two sides of the same coin. There are things you must remember. You must remember the Holocaust. You must commemorate it. It's always and you must forget. You must forget who lived here just a few years before I was born, that there was an entire civilization there, and it was erased from memory as well as concretely.
Omer says rhetoric can be a first step on the path towards that kind of erasure. After October 7th, he noticed some really violent language from Israeli leadership regarding Palestinians in Gaza.
The rhetoric that came out right after October 7th, or on October 7th, was, remember what Amalek did to you, meaning those who attacked you have to be wiped out, men, women, children, and babies.
This was referring to a biblical passage.
Yes, exactly. And everybody, when you say that in Israel, everybody knows what you mean. It was, they're all human animals, a statement by the Minister of Defense. It was, they will have no water. They will have no food. They will have no power. They will have nothing. They are human animals and they'll be treated as such. A statement saying there are no uninvolved people by the president of the state. Nobody is uninvolved in Gaza. So these were statements that were made in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. And at the time, you could say, and I still thought, look, these people are mad. 800 civilians were massacred. And they, in Israel, rhetoric is very hot. And maybe they're just making these statements. By May, it was clear that these statements were not simply a sort of expression of outrage. They were also acting as incitement to soldiers.
So October 7th happens, and then in November of 2023, you weighed in publicly in the New York Times, saying you thought what was going on in Gaza was not a genocide, but you saw signs of genocidal intent that concerned you. And it seemed to me that at the time, you thought perhaps speaking out in this way might prevent the war from devolving. Was that your intent at the time?
Absolutely. And look, the New York Times, they decide on the title. So most people don't read everything, as we know, certainly not in our day and age. So people drew from the title that, this particular genocide expert says it's not a genocide. But what I said was the opposite. What I said was there are war crimes, crimes against humanity, and we don't stop it. It's going to become genocide, and it's better to warn of genocide before it happens than to lament it after it's already taken place. That's exactly what I wrote there. So I was hoping that somebody would pay attention, and had the Biden administration paid attention, which it adamantly refused to do, it could have stopped it in November or December 2023, and we might have said then that, yes, this was a terrible war. 10,000 people had already died, thousands of children, mass destruction, but it did not quite become genocide. But they didn't stop it.
So you say that in May 2024, that's when things began to tip over for you, and where you began to think, I'm a genocide scholar. I can recognize genocide when I see it. what were you seeing at the time that you said, we must label this genocide?
Right. So what I saw at the time was the IDF in early May decided that it was going to take over the city of Rafah. This is the southernmost city of Gaza. It's on the Egyptian border. And at the time, it had a population of about 1 million people. And so they took 1 million people from Rafah and moved them out to the Mawasi area, which is a beach area along the southwestern coast of Gaza on the Mediterranean, without any infrastructure whatsoever. 1 million people, right? That's half the population of Gaza. And then they moved into Rafah and flattened it, so that by August it wasn't there. And at that point, I said to myself, so what is happening here? What is actually the goal of all this? By May, June 2024, it appeared to me, watching what they had done up to then, that the plan was to make Gaza uninhabitable, was to destroy it. Because every time they told people to leave a place because it's going to become an area of operations, once people left it, they flattened it.
Yeah, you make the point that with genocide, the intent is to destroy a group's ability to rebuild, and that's a really important part of the allegation of genocide because it destroys the ability for people to have power in their lives. And while plenty of governments have killed lots and lots of people, including the United States government, there is an effort at rebuilding that separates those actions from becoming genocidal.
Yes. Look, I mean, genocide, as I said, is a very particular crime. It's different from other crimes. Genocide is the intent to destroy a group in whole or in part as such. So some people say, well, how can you call it genocide? They've only killed between 60 and 100,000 people. Only, right? That's not genocide. If they killed 1 million people, maybe we could call it genocide. So that's not the way you define genocide. The determining factor is if your intent is to destroy that group as a group. That is, you kill people, you debilitate people, you destroy the health of children, you make it impossible for the group to maintain its health, its well-being, and later to reconstitute its identity, its social, cultural, and political identity by removing it from where it lives, by destroying everything that it had built. So you don't have to kill everyone. That's the intent is not mass extermination. The intent is destruction of the group as such. And clearly, this is right now the policy of the Israeli government. I defy anyone to tell me that that's not what Israel is trying to do. It may not succeed in doing it, but it's certainly making a major effort with total impunity at accomplishing that.
We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Avid Reader Press. Legendary investor Ray Dalio's new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle, explains the mechanics behind big debt crises. Larry Summers says Dalio's brilliant iconoclastic approach is an invaluable resource, and Hank Paulson says it provides a solution to what is the biggest and most certain threat to our prosperity. Read it to understand the greatest economic issue of our time. Available now wherever books are sold.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
I'm Ashley Graham, and as a parent, I know the back-to-school transition can be a lot. When it comes to wellness, Ollie supports me and my family through it all. Kids Multi is big in my house. It supports their immune system, and they love to take it. A win-win for everyone. Shop these products at ollie.com or retailers nationwide. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
You've written that most genocide scholars are cautious about using the term genocide. But you are so clear right now about how you feel about what's going on in Gaza. Explain why your colleagues are cautious and why you are not anymore.
So I'm not an exception among genocide scholars. There is a growing consensus among genocide scholars and experts in international law that what we are watching is genocide. There's more people in these groups say there is genocide than not. Where there is great resistance to that is among Holocaust scholars and institutions that were created to commemorate and research the Holocaust. And there has been either total silence, as if nothing is happening, a few exceptional people who have spoken out, exceptional, especially in Israel, and most brave, because it's very hard to say that in Israel, and some people among Holocaust historians who blame genocide scholars of anti-Semitism for saying that this is genocide.
Explain what that rift looks like, because I imagine someone like you, who has both lived in Israel and is Jewish, might move in all of these spaces. And so you may be having very different conversations with people where usually you'd be aligned with them. Mm-hmm. When did those conversations begin to change and how?
Yeah, I was on for 20 years, I was on the editorial board of Yad Vashem Studies. Yad Vashem is the Institute for the Commemoration and Research of the Holocaust in Israel. It's a national institution, and they have an academic journal. And I was on the board of that journal for at least 2 decades. And about a year ago, I was speaking with members of the board, emailing with members of the board who are international, who are from Germany, Britain, the US, and so forth, UK. And I was saying, look, I feel increasingly uncomfortable about us as, so to speak, distinguished scholars of the Holocaust, acting as if nothing is happening in Gaza. And I think it behooves us to say something, to express ourselves in some way.
What did your colleagues say?
Most of them said nothing. One was very angry at me, actually a German scholar. One, an American scholar, was sort of made uncomfortable. Most said nothing. And obviously no one agreed with me, and I resigned because I could not be part of this conspiracy of silence. Whether it was because people didn't agree with me or didn't think it was their role or thought we are just an academic board and we should just deal with our own little narrow path, I disagreed with that. But more generally, I think there are people feel very uncomfortable with what I'm saying about Israel among those who before that saw me as a respectable Holocaust scholar, and they wanted to know what I had to say about that.
Yeah. We should talk about what the people who are angry with you say. Like, in December, you've written that the Holocaust scholar Norman Goda said genocide charges have been used as a fig leaf for broader challenges to Israel's legitimacy. So I'll just ask you, are you challenging Israel's legitimacy?
Of course, no, that's not the point. If you identify that a particular country, be it Israel or Iceland, is engaged in genocide, and you have some authority to be able to say that, people may disagree with you, but at least they'll take you seriously and you take your judgment seriously, you have to say it. You can't say, well, it may be misinterpreted. It may delegitimize that society. Yes, a society that is engaged in genocide is and should be under threat of being seen as illegitimate. We don't want to think of countries carrying out genocide as, okay, they're fine, they're doing genocide, but otherwise they're perfectly nice countries. We don't want that, right? Now, I do think that Israel, as it is now, is a country that is carrying out totally indefensible policies, that is ruled by a group of people who are despicable, whose ideology is Jewish supremacist, militaristic, racist, expansionist, and that kind of politics in Israel, that kind of Zionism, what they see as Zionism, is not mine. And I completely disapprove of it. I would never support it. But I do support the right of Jews, like every other group, to self-determine, to create a state for themselves, as they did. But it has to be a state where there are equal rights to all people and dignity to all people, and not a state that does not even give equal rights to its Palestinian citizens and is occupying millions of people who don't want to be ruled by it. That's not the kind of Zionism that my parents and my and the founders of Zionism wanted to have. It's a distortion of Zionism.
I think there's something going on where people associate the state of Israel so closely with the Holocaust and the trauma of the Holocaust. And it creates this paradox for people where they might feel like Jews, who are the victims of a genocide, can't be the perpetrators of one.
So I've heard that argument being made, of course. If I cut to the chase, I think what Israel is doing right now in Gaza, it's running out of the credit that it enjoyed as the answer to the Holocaust, as a country that can literally do whatever it wants because of the Holocaust. And I think that this is a long process. I'll give you an example. In 1988, the first Intifada began in December 1987. And the Israeli Minister of Defense at the time, Yitzhak Rabin, who later is remembered as a peacemaker, said to Israeli soldiers that how they should act against Palestinian youths who were throwing rocks at them. He said, break their arms and legs. And the response was very brutal by the Israeli army at the time. Now it looks like, it's nothing compared to what we're seeing now. And in March, I think, of 1988, an Israeli professor, Yehuda Elkanah, who himself was a child survivor of the Holocaust, wrote an article in Haaretz called In Praise of Forgetting. And what he said was that this constant Israeli education of Israeli youth to always remember the Holocaust and to always respond to any threat as if it is a threat of another Holocaust completely distorts people's understanding of their own reality and has the potential of creating more and more aggression and violence.
You've called this sheltering in the shadow of the Holocaust.
Exactly. And he was right then. He was early in saying that. Things have become much worse. People now use the Holocaust, with which they have no personal acquaintance whatsoever. They present themselves as third-generation survivors because their grandparents were or might have been persecuted by the Nazis. So I think to use that argument to say, well, you can't speak about genocide in Gaza because Israel is the successor state of the genocide of the Jews by the Nazis is an extremely, it's not only a strange way of understanding reality, it distorts it in a way that makes it impossible for yourself to perceive what you're actually engaged in.
It's interesting because if what you're saying is true, you're really laying out some fundamental things about the Israeli psyche that you want to question in this moment. And that's a very big ask.
Yes, I mean, I'm not, I just finished the book now. I'm going over the copy edits of the book called Israel, What Went Wrong? And I tried to sketch that from the beginning of Zionism to the present. What happened to Zionism and how Israel became what it is, from a movement of liberation, of emancipation, of human rights, of appeals to humanitarianism, to a state ideology that is exclusionary, that is ethno-nationalist, and with strong racist elements. So I try to trace that transformation. Not everybody has to agree with it, but if you want to understand the deeper roots of what is happening now in Gaza, the deeper roots are not October 7th. The deeper roots go back to 1948 and even before that, to the fact that Zionism was geared to create a Jewish majority state and could not do that after the Holocaust, after so many million of Jews were murdered, those who were supposed to come to that state, and did it the other way by expelling the majority, that is, by expelling the Palestinians, and thereby making it into a Jewish majority state. That's something that Israeli society has never contended with. It's not something that is reversible. It's a fact on the ground, but it's never been confronted. And as long as it isn't, that country put itself on a course, not an inevitable one, but a likely one that leads all the way to what we see in Gaza now.
Omer, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Omer Bartov is the Dean's Professor of Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Brown University. One correction. Earlier in the show, Omer referenced an article by the historian Yuval Kana, but mistakenly referred to it using the title In Praise of Forgetting. The actual title is The Need to Forget. We'll put a link to that article in our show notes. All right, that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, Ethan Oberman, and Anna Phillips. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go say hey on Blue Sky if you want. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.
I'm Chris Hadfield. I'm an astronaut, an author, a citizen of planet Earth. Join me for a 6-part journey into the systems that power the world. Real conversations with real people who are shaping the future of energy. No politics, no empty talk, just solutions-focused conversations on the challenges we must overcome and the possibilities that lie ahead. This is On Energy.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Lowe's knows that more projects mean more tools. For a limited time, new and existing MyLowe's Rewards credit card members can get 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more, in-store and online. Don't wait to get the things you need. Get special financing today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Now through August 27th, choose 12-month special financing on purchases of $299 or more. Offer subject to credit approval and cannot be combined. Minimum monthly payments required. See store at Lowe's.com for details.